Hi, this is Tim Clark with End Times Matrix News, here today with Chris, and we are going to be doing another show dealing with some very strange end times events that have just happened. We are going to be covering the Golden and Silver Gate, Mystery Babylon, the 88 DNA code, the CERN ritual coming out of the abyss, the New World Order currency, alignments on the 88th degree, the birthing of the Antichrist, the opening of the abyss, and all the interesting dates that are starting to line up. How are you doing today, Chris?
Hello, I'm doing good.
So, what do you think about the topic for today?
I
Think
was
it's narrow
holding
enough?
myself back from laughing. No, it's a lot that we've been researching lately, putting these things together.
And we've been working hard with Anthony Patch to bring forth some other in-depth shows. So we're collaborating with Anthony. But we thought we would just start off covering some of these topics because we've really gotten into some things that I think add to the understanding of what's going on. So where should we start today?
Well, we can start with the tunnel in Switzerland that had a strange demonic satanic ritual coming out of the abyss.
So what we're going to cover here is the Goddard Tunnel ritual that we watched in Switzerland. It's not at CERN, but it is in Switzerland, and it is definitely connected with the rituals going on. I believe they spent, what was it, 8 million euros on this ritual event with the Goddard Tunnel. And Chris will go into depth discussing which Sumerian story that is connected to this Goddard Tunnel event. Let's go over the tunnel ritual, what was symbolized in this ritual, and then we'll connect it to some ancient history of what's actually going on.
Okay. The first thing that you see is a crowd of zombies coming out in their orange suits. There's a lot of satanic, weird sound music going on during this whole ritual that was awful. There's so much going on in this ritual that we can only cover so much, but basically it's a ritual of coming out of the abyss, beheadings, sacrifices, and then coming out into the light, basically. One of the things that was significant in this ritual was the Baphomet and the worship of the Baphomet, the veil covering the people's heads so they cannot see. These people that are, they strip their orange suits off and they're dancing really crazy. And, and then you have these people with a bunch of trees on their heads. And actually, I have a picture that shows the Proto Shiva and Cernunnos, that's the gatekeeper of Orion, where the gate is, with a tree coming out the center of its head, because the head is actually a trident and it symbolizes the Kabbalah tree and the crown chakra. But the head on these people, they have trees growing out. So it is the tree of consciousness that grows out of it. And they come out of this huge tunnel with mountains on the sides with this portal looking thing with a bunch of eyeballs. It has a bunch of different things going on the screen, which is pretty wild. And then they do this dance with the Baphomet, and this lady in red comes out pregnant. And then this other girl Baphomet type figure comes out, and they're just doing weird dances. And then people with these big old head things on.
So we're just trying to figure out what is this craziness that we're watching. Rick Wiles came out with the initial video on True News of the actual Goddard ritual, filmed by Ruppli, which is the Russian television news service. So we're watching these things. We got Angela Merkel there. We got the French representative there. And everybody is trying to figure out what is going on here. But basically, we've connected that this is another ritual for the New World Order related to a Sumerian epic tale. What I found interesting when we were looking at this, we came across this one photo of a lady with a bird's nest on her head. And, I looked at that and, I'm monitoring these stories from these other sci-fi channels and stuff. And I look right at her and I go, wow, that's that Dr. Jones character from the 12 Monkeys, the sci-fi time travel show. or somebody who looks like a spitting image of her. And I said, that can't be. So we went and checked her out on IMDb, the internet database. And this is a Katarina Jones character in 12 Monkeys, a famous German actress. We put a couple photos up there of her with the actual Goddard thing, and and it looks like her. It looks like a spitty image of her. And I'm going, what is the lead character from 12 Monkeys, supposedly the person who created time travel, doing in this Goddard ceremony? And what does this have to do? Which automatically connects it with our previous CERN stuff and their manipulation of time that they're involved in. So if this is actually the exact same actress, I think this is a very symbolic connection between time travel, the Goddard ceremony, and the portals opening. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, it's exactly what the ritual is based on the same rituals that was in ancient history. We know that CERN says that they want to open a portal to a parallel dimension, and we know that the Golden Gate and the Silver Gate are to transport humans and demons through each gate. I think this is the same thing, but it's a ritual of opening the Golden Gate for the Antichrist, because there was something significant in December 21st, 2012, which basically was a grand crossing. And each grand crossing represents the 8-pointed star. This you can find on the Mayan calendars, the Dendera map. You can see this on old ancient hieroglyphs in their cosmic calendars, because this is what they go by. This is their life. This is what they go by. This is what the occult goes by, is everything to do with the planets and the constellations. So Shamash was a god, Thoth's son, which Thoth is also Enlil, and his name is Shamash. He's also Marduk, Utu, which means iron, and the planet Mars. And his twin is Inanna, which is Venus, Ishtar, which is copper. And we know that Tubal-Cain was a smith, builder of iron and brass, which is copper in the Bible. And we know that Mars and Venus, which if Mars represents the sun and Venus represents the moon, and these two individuals are really the same being, but they represent the sun and the moon. The sun is 6 and the moon is 9, so this is where we get the 69. And each star has 8 points. So if you look up Shamash's name, his name is the 8-pointed star, and then 4 of them are waves, like electric waves. And if you look up Inanna's name, her name is also an 8-pointed star, also in hieroglyphs. Venus is the 8-pointed star in hieroglyphs, and so is Anu. And 369 does equal 88. 88 also means magic. And I translated 88, and it came out to maggot, and I said, what's maggot? I don't even know what maggot is. I went in and translated it from Latin into many different languages and trying to figure out, well, what does 88 mean? And it said it meant maggot. So I look up maggot, and maggot is used to define a concrete person and another defining a celestial entity. So half human, half entity, I guess. And then I looked more into the word to see what it meant, and it means magic. So 88 translates exactly to magic. And so the 2 pillars are the 2 mountains representing the 2 pillars on each side of the gate that want to merge, 2 8s merging into 1 8 to become male and female, dark and light, yin and yang. This is what the symbolism is that they're making. And we know that the 8 is the ogdoad. 8 represents the pyramid with the 8 sides, and 8 is the frequency of Saturn. And the 3 actually represents Saturn, 6 represents the sun, and 9 represents the moon. So that is your Trinity concept. And I can prove that because Om, I was looking into that chant that they do, which is Om, because Ohm also means 88. Ohm is 8, composed of 8 parts representing the Ogdode. Om is Shiva, the star in the crescent. It's Brahma and Vishnu. And if you look at old pictures of Brahma and Vishnu, you'll see the lotus flower, which Brahma is sitting on with his 4 heads, 4 faces representing the lion, eagle, ox, and man, because Brahma is Saturn. And his umbilical cord is stuck to Vishnu, which is Jupiter. So Om is really chanting to all of the 8 planets, including the sun and the moon, which is very interesting because when people are doing the yoga or they're doing the chanting and they're doing the Oms and they have these, they're going through the vibration of the chakras, each chakra represents a planet. And when you get to the crown chakra with this Om and this vibration, this is actually worshiping Satan. It's worshiping the gods of the dead. And these are the gods of the dead that these people worship. They're coming out of this tunnel, out of the abyss, and they're worshiping Lucifer. They're worshiping these gods of the dead, which are the Ogdoad.
What we're witnessing is another part of the grand, great work, the overall awakening, as they would say, to the Luciferian awakening, welcoming in their deity and the dead. The year of light, which was in 2015, was ending in February 4th through 6th of this year, of 2016. They specifically ended it in Merida in the Yucatan Peninsula. I have been there before. And it was fascinating because what they did was they went out to the Chichen Itza pyramid. And I was going, what does this have to do with the year of light? And the Chichen Itza pyramid, of course, if you look at it, and I've been on top of the pyramid in Chichen Itza. It's a Mayan step pyramid, again, connecting us back to the Mayan calendar. It's also a pyramid without a capstone on it, if you look at it. So it also represents, in my way of looking at it, that they're now at the capstone aspect of their New World Order. So we're looking at this Goddard Tunnel ceremony as they're basically opening up the gate of hell, the CERN portal, basically symbolism here. And then I started thinking back to the Mayan calendar, December 21st, 2012. And then I said to Chris, well, what is 3.5 years from that date? And so we came up with June 21st, 2016. Then we said, oh, well, isn't that a coincidence that it just happens to coincide with the International Day of Yoga, which is on the June 21st of 2016. And I was going, isn't that interesting that we're looking at the biblical concepts that the Christians are looking at with the 7-year, Daniel's last week of the 7-year cycle. But here we are at a 3.5-year point following the Mayan count, which it would be the New World Order's cycle. And we're going, June 21st, National Yoga Day, and also the 3.5 years since the Mayan calendars officially, when people were waiting at that period of time. So it basically brought to mind we're entering an interesting time where I think that from listening to different presenters that they have been hinting towards something interesting at the end of June to July related to financial. We've been watching this for a while that they're hinting towards the end of June, July, as far as what they're supposedly, the people in the know are supposedly supposed to be saying will happen in the financial world. I just found it really interesting that we came across these connections with these times, the Goddard Tunnel, the end of the year of light, the completion of the 5776, great work of the Freemasons, and the Silver Gate and the Golden Gate. Again, when we look back to the 9/11 event of 2001, which was 10 years to the day of Papa Bush and his New World Order speech, that was a 9/11 event or a Silver Gate event. That got us into talking about the Freemason, New Atlantis, Francis Bacon connections of the United States. What is the ritual being played out here? Because we're watching these rituals. The Goddard Tunnel is a ritual connected to the story of Shamash burrowing through the mountain, right? Through the rock.
Right.
And
which represents the pineal gland, because the 3 stars of Orion represent the 3 pyramids, and the center part of the trident, which is Cernunnos's head on Orion, is the pineal gland. So that's what it represents.
Yeah, so here is Chris connecting the story of Shamash coming through the mountain, which is the pineal gland. If you study the Giza pyramids and the belt of Orion and how it relates to consciousness or the brain or these things, the pineal gland is the center point, and then you have the thalamus and the pituitary glands also connected to these three pyramids if you studied that aspect of the pyramids. So we started looking at, well, if 9/11 occurred in New York City, and New York was, well, the original 13 colonies were founded on rebellion number 13. 13 stands for rebellion. The 13 colonies were a rebellion. It starts making me think of the Mystery Babylon, the Tower of Babel, Babylon, and all the connections to the United States. And these twin towers, and Chris and I had looked at the Washington Arch, right? Remember the Washington Arch?
Yep.
Where Jonathan Kleck had brought that out, that it had framed the Twin Towers. We had looked at Gemini twins as the 2/8s, as Chris is talking about, and how the One World Freedom Tower is the other 8, or the marriage of heaven and earth, or the androgynous male-female aspect, which is the deity Baphomet. I'm trying to get this point across to people. Baphomet, the IXXI gate Baphomet, the deity of the Templars, is the transgender movement. It is the homosexual movement. It is the trying to make the world's occupants represent the deity that the one world order people worship, which is this androgynous God, or the marriage of heaven and earth, or the marriage of the male and female. They want transgender or this androgyny. Our channel is named after the Matrix concept. And if you look at the makers of the Matrix, the Wachowski brothers, well, if you look at them now, they're both the Wachowski sisters. So again, the followers of the Baphomet Mystery School, the followers of Masonic followers, the Mystery School followers, the One World Religion followers, they're really pushing this stuff. The Target, as other commentators have focused on, had pre-scheduled this transgender conflict to occur years ago, that they had basically this whole transgender bathroom thing. It was nothing more than a planned attack on the old order to bring in the new order, or the new world order, and the new world order is the world of the Baphomet. So when you're contemplating transgender and the androgyny, or the changing of sexes, you're looking at the marriage of heaven and earth, or the opposites, fusion of the opposites. And all the old religions, if you look at Taoism, they have the fusion of the 5 elements. They have the marriage of heaven and earth. And that gets us into all this yoga stuff, the marriage of heaven and earth. These rituals that they do. I know a lot of people don't think that there's anything negative involved in the practice of yoga, but yoga is a term meaning yoking, and it is yoking as spiritual. There is a spiritual component that yokes the practice. Now, you can do calisthenics, you could do all those, and I understand why people feel good stretching and all these kinds of stuff. But the point is, when you're involved in a spiritual practice that has its origin in the spiritual practice, the people can tell you whatever you want to hear to make you do it, but you're still involved in a opening of the pineal gland, or the Shakti part of the Kundalini energy. And it's preparing the world for the opening of the third eye, and then, of course, trapping you in that open serpent third eye under the working of the New World Order. We were looking at how does the checkerboard Freemason approach the United States work? And that's what got us looking into a couple of the interesting aspects in the United States. Why don't you pick up from there, Chris, of what we were talking about with the Tower of Babel, the Mystery Babylon, and the United States, and some of our ideas that we have arrived at.
Okay, well, the whole reason that they're doing this is because of the Antichrist and the raising of the Antichrist. We have a Namar palette that is December 25th, 3117, which shows the silver gate on it. This is something that I'm working on with Anthony, and hopefully we'll get to do a show with him again sometime, we get attacked every time that we do a show together really bad. So we've been praying about it, and hopefully we'll get to do it. But CERN basically is a representation of the Tarwar, which is the casket of Osiris. And the whole thing of this is the raising of Osiris with the Djed and the 4 dimensions, the Ankh, which is the 8 deities that we discussed that represent the capstone. This is actually what CERN is doing, is they want to raise the Antichrist. This whole symbolism with these hieroglyphs and the casket of Osiris is December 25th of 3117, raising the Antichrist. And what's interesting is that we have the Jubilees that we spoke about with the Pope doing the Jubilees that ends November 20th. In the womb of Virgo, exactly on that day, is Jupiter. And we know Jupiter is the god of lightning, the trident, the king of the gods, the resurrected Saturn. So we have that connection with that also with the Jubilees. And then we have a lot of symbolism in that we did in our other shows, like the 235 symbolism, that America is going to be put on the Budweiser can on 235, which is 523, and it's going to be removed during the Jubilee of this year, which is very interesting symbolism of the removal of America. And then we put together what's going on with America, lining up the trident with the silver, the gold, and the pineal gland merging together.
These rituals are being performed by sorcerers or magicians, occultists, to basically, this is the way they conduct their magic. And this type of magic is called chaos magic, and it's also based off sigil magic. The sigil is the creating an image to draw energy into, and then the releasing of that energy is the destroying of that image. So this is a very old form of magic that these people are operating under. What they're doing is, through trauma and tragedy, the demonic spirit, the demonic energies are vampiring the energy off of humans. This is the whole Matrix concept of the Matrix, was that humans are soul energy, spiritual energy, and that these fallen angels, the angelic realm that has rebelled and the demonic that have rebelled against God, are unplugged from God, and they are vampiring the spiritual or soul energy from the human race through traumatizing it, setting up these things so that they can draw off negative energy. So it is a vampiric process. So 9/11 was the beginning of this march across America in the symbolic sense of the Silver Gate here, the intentional joining of the Gemini twins, which I pointed out before over and over again. The Kelly brothers represent the Gemini twins of NASA. The two brothers represent the Gemini twins and their ceremonies that they do between one being on the earth and one being in heaven, the joining of heaven and earth again. We started with New York City. Jonathan Kleck and others have connected the currencies to specific events, the Twin Towers, and that sigil magic, which was drawing in the trauma of 9/11 or the Silver Gate ritual in New York City that the Rockefellers had set up through the Washington Arch with the Twin Towers to show the destruction of the towers, to gather the energy of the trauma of America. Also, the removing of the towers is the transitioning of power from America, because there's a transitioning in the New World Order from destroying the old order, which was the American freedom of democracy, well, a representative republic, to a tyranny system, which is represented by the pyramid. Because under a pharaoh or under an Egyptian system, it's all tyranny. It's a fascist, tyrannical system that's run by the pharaoh, which would be the Antichrist character, and his minions, or the religious followers of his that are the elite class, which is shown in Plato's book, The Republic, the form of leadership they want to follow, which is you're born into by blood into an elite class, and you rule over the slaves through a military fascist order of military guards. And that's basically what the New World Order is. It's a tyranny system. But we started mapping the Giza pyramids across the United States, and we started noticing with CERN and Cernunnos the site of the goddess, or Isis. We began talking about Isis and her march across the Middle East, piecing back together Nimrod, or Osiris, by destroying the opposition. And we have the goddess sitting out in the harbor of New York City representing Isis. So we're marching from Isis all the way across America until we end up over on the West Coast in San Francisco and the Golden Gate to where the sun. So we're transitioning from Isis to Osiris again. What we found interesting was the middle part of the St. Louis Arch, which is what we believe is the pituitary gland.
Pineal gland.
Okay.
It's the center of the trident.
So the St. Louis represents the center of the trident, the 3 points that we were talking about with the trident, the New York City, the Old Order, the Isis and the goddess, the pineal gland, in the middle, St. Louis, the arch, and then we have the West Coast, Golden Gate Bridge, moving to the New Order, also the sun god, Shamash.
Yeah, and it's interesting because right there where the pineal gland is the 88th degree of the United States. And what's really fascinating about that and about all these dates that we've been streaming together is that we talked about Jupiter being in the womb on November 20th when the Jubilees ends and the new king is supposed to be announced during that time, or power goes over to the Vatican. So that is just known throughout history that that's what happens during the end of this Jubilee with this 50th year type thing that happened with the end of Vatican II. And then we have the 50 states of the United States. And so we have this checkerboard grounds that we're looking at with the United States and the Freemasons. If that's on the 88th degree and we have Shamash coming up through the mountain, tearing apart the United States, this is a huge ritual that possibly could happen because on August the 17th, the cosmic egg, which is a total solar eclipse. This is the same thing that happened December 25th, 3117. This is what the Egyptians would raise the casket of Osiris, and they would do the ritual to open the portal to raise Horus. And this is the same thing that CERN is doing, the same exact thing. And we'll have to go into more of that with Anthony. We have a lot of detail with the Z-pinch, and we're talking about the Z-pinch with the United States, with the pineal gland in the center, the silver and golden gate, because the Shin rings represent Shamash and Inanna. And these are the 8-pointed stars. 8-pointed star is the star of chaos, and you can look that up. Star of chaos is the 8-pointed star. And this is their name written in the 8-pointed star in hieroglyphs. So you have the moon and the sun wanting to merge, and then you have the 88th degree of the United States possibly being split into two. And then we have the Ogdode, which is the 8, the egg going across, hitting exactly on Missouri on August 17th.
And then isn't Missouri an interesting place in fiction as far as it relates to the Wizard of Oz?
Yes, because we're talking about all of this stuff is just like mind blowing. So we have Ohm, and we talked about Ohm and how Ohm is the 8, and Ohm is Saturn and Venus and Jupiter that represent the 8 planets. And this is representing the Ogdode. So we have the Ohm, and I was doing a lot of research a long time ago, and I realized that Ohm, backwards it's Mo, and we know that the Hebrew is written backwards. There's other languages that were written backwards before also, but Mo is a fictional region neighboring the land of Oz. It is sometimes called the Beautiful Valley of Mo. The land of Mo is mentioned in the life and adventures of Santa Claus, as well as in the Patchwork Girl of Oz, and it appears in the Scarecrow of Oz. because this writer, Frank Baum, who wrote The Master Key with the Eye, The Emerald City of Oz, going through the two pillars, he wrote all of these stories about TikTok and all of this stuff, which is interesting because in The Adventures of Santa Claus, he's Cernunnos with the two horns, and he finds Cain, which is the one horn because Cain's the middle pillar. He finds Cain and he gives him to Tefnut, a lioness, in the movie. And the lioness raises Cain. And this is also an Egyptian hieroglyphs with the lioness and Cain, Canis Ptah. So it's quite fascinating that you can put this Mo, and he made this huge map and everything. It looks like a real map that this guy Frank Baum made in the land of Mo. And I also found it interesting because Mo is the abbreviation for MOSFET, and it's a switch in the center. It's like quantum tunneling. So the switch has to be on and off, kind of like the quantum computer at a certain processing level in order to turn the switch. And this is what I try to discuss with Anthony about the switch and the Birkeland currents, which represent 88, connect together from the trident above, from the trident below. And that's what CERN is trying to create, is that current that goes together to open up the portal.
And what's also interesting with us stumbling across the Missouri, the Arch, the gateway to the West is what the Missouri Arch is about. What's also interesting about that is that, again, following on the Oz concept out there, we have parts of Arkansas, Kansas, Missouri, and Oklahoma. We have a mountain range that has been found to be called the Ozark, which is the Ozark. And in this area, we also have some of these deep, dumb facilities for the elite that has been shown in the past. So we're marching across the United States from the events of 9/11 to the Arch of St. Louis, which is the pineal gland, is what we're speculating with the trident, all the way out to the West Coast and the Golden Gate. So we are looking at a ritual march across the United States, transitioning from Inanna to Shamash. It's just absolutely fascinating. Well, of course, we're going to have to do further shows on this with Anthony involved in looking at the Z-Pinch, looking at more with the Osiris machine and CERN, and also how it applies to the United States.
Hopefully we can do that soon. Just before we go, I wanted just to touch on the 88 really quick and just say that 88 equals 7, which is Shiva. Shiva means 7. Shiva is also means Sirius. 8 plus 8 is 16, and 1 plus 6 is 7. So all of these numbers are magic. They're magic numbers. And 7 equals 4 and 3, which represents the swastika that we talked about. Ursa Major connected to the pole star is another 8. We know there's 88 keys on the piano, and we know that Pope Benedict is 88 this year also. He's the one that wears the gold, and Obama bowed to in that Jubilees ritual that they did in December of last year that ends in November. And the capstone that Tim was talking about is the 8. It is the Ogdode. It is the stone that Thoth apparently laid when he was the Bennu bird as the sun. And so these 8 deities represented Helios, which is the 9, the Ennead. These 8 deities are the capstone. The capstone ends in 5776, which is the New World Order. And I'll put several links that people can look at regarding the calendar of the pyramid. The pyramid has been around a long time. The base of it is 1776. It ends in 5776. And that goes along with the other calendars as well. When you put them together, it's pretty fascinating. Something big did happen in December 21st of 2012, and that's 369. It's 33 and 5, and it adds up to 369, 88, 911. So those are all magic numbers. And what's interesting too is this winter solstice this year starts on December 21st, and that's another 33. This is the winter solstice that they use to worship Osiris and the raising of Osiris. And IPEC Goat 2, the scorpion in the sky at the end, and that shows the Antichrist coming out as Christ through the abyss, just like they did this ritual. And when you see Scorpio in the sky and the pyramids are no longer there, then that is showing that he came through the Golden Gate. And that is what they want to happen, is for their Antichrist to be raised through the Golden Gate.
So we'll continue to follow up this topic about CERN, the rituals, Goddard rituals, how it's just another ritual in the long progression of the opening of the abyss that we witnessed from 9/11 and the destruction of the Twin Towers,
right,
into the forming of the Baphomet, which is their destination. The God of this world is who these people are worshiping. Doesn't really matter the name they're using, Lucifer, the Baphomet. It doesn't matter, but it's going to be a transgender, androgynous, anything goes sexuality of the Baphomet. And so that is the destination that they're working towards with the Golden Gate.
Speaking of destruction, the Cassini is going to explode into Saturn September of 2017. And then the birthing of Jupiter is September 23rd, 2017, with the 12 stars on the woman's head and the moon at her feet, the sun on her head.
And that is definitely a biblical reference that a lot of different Christian astronomer researchers have looked at, is that alignment is a biblical alignment. And it's very fascinating that we're watching that this Cassini thing, and we did plenty of shows with Anthony on different orbiting planets, what NASA was doing with their rituals. And then they're going to plunge this Cassini probe into Saturn, which to me is just another form of sigil magic, where they create something and they destroy it to release something new. That is the destruction of the United States. We'll get into that in a future discussion of how that relates to the Tower of Babel and story of Nimrod and the New World Order.
Which in the New World Order, there will be a new currency. And another 88 is 1988, and that is when they wrote this economic magazine article that they predicted that in 2018 there would be a currency established in 2018, and it's on the Phoenix on their front cover, which the Phoenix resembles destruction and rebirth also.
Which is the phoenix rising out of the ashes. So a currency that rises out of the ashes of destruction, which of course is a foreshadowing to the destruction of the United States petrodollar and a crippling of the world economies, and this new form of currency, which of course is in the beast system. But we'll continue to get more in depth into these topics. Just keep exploring them and exposing them, because exposing these people is very important. It's not to sensationalize them. It is to expose them, to shine the light of day on them. People can't deny this is what's going on. They can't deny that the folks who are involved with Christian ministries pointing out the working of these United Nations, Satanist, Luciferian factions and their rituals is going on. People can't deny it once we expose it. You just will not see this on the mainstream media, because their job is to distract and not to inform. And what we're doing here, the free alternative Christian media, is exposing, shining the light, getting the information out there so you can do your own research and verify what we're talking about. Thank you, Chris, for today. This was awesome. What you've shown with the ancient history, depiction, rituals connected to the coming New World Order, Osiris, the stories of Shamash coming through the mountain, the pineal gland, the Goddard Tunnel, and the role of America in the forming of the New World Order. So this was a great show. We'll continue the Baphomet discussion related to transgenderism and the promotion of homosexuality to transition to an asexuality, gender-neutral kind of world where any type of sex is accepted, pedophilia, any form of sex. So this is their God, and what is it? The whole of the law? Do as thou wilt may, or do as thou will. So, they're Satanists, and that's straight up. Then their Baphomet is their they want the world to emulate Baphomet, and that's what's going on. And
Oh,
of course, Target is with their symbol represents the Luciferian agenda. So they're of course leading the way in representing the Baphomet issue. So we will talk to you next time.
yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Tim.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.